Right, so we will be starting the webinar now. So thank you very much for joining. My name is Richard Chiesa, and I am the support manager here at Ionic Information. And today we will be going through the financial data display and some filtering as well with SharePad. So the financials page in SharePad is an extremely detailed one, but it can be a little bit daunting for some users. So today I'm going to go through each part and explain some nice tips and tricks, and we'll also have a look at then displaying information in columns and filtering as well. And at the end there'll be a bit of a Q&A session, so if you have any specific questions, anything that I've missed, you can ask away then. So the financial page here will open up. I've chosen to display BAE Systems because it's a nice big company, it's got a lot of information. I am going to press the button at the top here to zoom the financials pages into full screen. The financial page is divided in lots of tabs, as you can see: summary, company, income, balance, etc. And I'm going to start off looking at the summary page. This has been designed as your one-stop shop to have a quick look at a company and being able to see if being able to tell at a glance if the company is worth considering for further investigation. So on the left-hand side, we have the we call the dashboard. Here you will see a table of various bits of interesting and useful information, and it will be coloured in green or red or grey, depending if it's a good, a neutral, or a bad thing. Just to go through quickly, on the top bar we have confidence. So this is how much confidence other people have in the company. So it starts off with the broker consensus, and it will tell you what the current consensus is. So it's outperform. And below here is what the past performance was. So this is, it's green and it's saying stronger. So it's currently, the current consensus is stronger than it was 3 months ago. Here you have the target price. The current target price of 629 is 23% higher than the current price, so that's good. And here you have institutional ownership and director ownership of a company has remained unchanged over the last 3 months, so it's neutral. We have figures like market capitalization, forecast PE, price to net asset value, etc. If you're not too sure what any of these values are, all you have to do is just click on the box and a little help window will open up listing you, detailing exactly what that figure is. You will see that below most of the figures, you will see it'll say 3Y AVG, which stands for 3-year average, and it will color it in red if the current value is below the 3-year average. So as we can see, it's the EBIT is positive. It's the EBIT, so this is the forecast EBIT growth, to be specific, forecast growth. It's 7.2%. However, that is significantly lower what the average over the last 3 years has been, which is 17.2, and so therefore it's colored in red. On the right hand side of this of the dashboard, you will see a small little chart that again at a glance will show you in green the share itself, so BAE Systems. In orange it will show you the sector index, so this in this case it's a FTSE 350 aerospace and defense, and the FTSE 100 index, so you can see over time which has outperformed the other. So BAE Systems has been doing better than both. And you can see it also divided on a year-by-year basis. So you see the 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18 outlook, and with the growth for each year, for each calendar year, marked at the bottom. You'll have some extra information below, like 52-week high, 52-week low, etc. Below that, you will have the carousel. Now, again, this is designed for you to be able to quickly analyze the information, and it will each page of a carousel will ask a question and will attempt to answer that question using charts. It will also give an explanation below the chart of why this question is important. So, for example, does the company pay a regular dividend? And the answer to that question is fairly obviously yes, it does, and an ever-increasing one over time. The carousel is divided into 4 tabs for key data, quality of a company, safety of a company, and valuation. And each tab is divided up into several different charts. So valuation, what multiple of earnings will you be paying? So what P ratio is. And you can press the arrow buttons here at the bottom to go to the next chart for that tab. You can edit what is being displayed on the summary by pressing the design button here at the bottom. If we press on design, you will have options here. Okay, how negative values are displayed and what the and how negative values are colored. So here we'll have negative values in brackets and the default color is black, but you can change it to red and have a minus symbol, for example, if you prefer it that way. Below here, you've got the summary dashboard layout. Now, the layout of the summary page it will be different depending on the type of company. There are 3 different layouts. One for non-financial companies, which is the one that we're currently looking at. It's BAE Systems. There's a slightly different layout for banks because there are lots of figures in the bank's financial report which are irrelevant for non-financial companies. And there's a separate one then for insurance. So if we select non-financial, we hit edit, we can design what appears in the various sections, so the confidence section, valuation section, etc. And to do that, we click on the relevant section. So let's do forecast growth, for example. It will open up and we can see which 4 values are currently being displayed, and at the bottom you'll see the available choices. So instead of having a forecast EBIT growth, if I'd rather have a forecast EBITDA growth, I can click and drag and drop it on there. And then I click on OK, OK again, and now I have the EBITDA on my forecast growth. Have a look through. There are several different combinations of options. Of course, this depends on what is important to you when you're analyzing a company, and you can have a look through that. Now, the next section is the company tab. Here is where you will find all sorts of generic information about the company itself. You will find the key information, things like what the ISIN code is of a company, or the seed or market cap, the number of employees. There's a little calendar here on the right of when the various announcements are last happened and are expected to happen next. For example, we can see that the Q2 announcement was of a Q2, so the first half yearly financial report came out, the last one came out on the 1st of August 2018, and the next one is due to come out on the 1st of August 2019. Now, the company hasn't yet made a declaration of when they'll be issuing the report, so its status is currently an estimation, simply based on when they issued the report last year. On the other hand, they have confirmed the date in which they'll be issuing their Q4 report, which is the 21st of February. Below that, there's a very useful little chart, which is the activity breakdown. Here you can see where the source of the company's revenue comes from. The way that the information is displayed here depends entirely on the company. Some companies do not offer any breakdown of their turnover in their financial report, and so this screen is going to be blank. Some companies, like BAE Systems, go into a lot of details about breaking down their sources of turnover, so you can see a nice little chart. And some companies will give a breakdown by region. Some companies will do it by product, and some companies will do it with both. There's a series of buttons here below at the bottom. The first one is to display the sources of turnover. Then there's sources of profit and where their assets are allocated. In this case, there are none for BAE Systems because the BAE system does not differentiate with where their assets are in the company financial report. If we move on to the next section, you will have a summary, and here it's just a description of what the company does. There are thousands of companies on the London Stock Exchange. You're surely going to encounter a company you have never heard of, so go to the summary page and it'll give you a quick description of what the company does. Below that is a list of directors, their names and since when they have been with a company and what their age is. Then we will have below that some company info, again the address and phone number, website, and even contact email address. And right at the bottom you will find out who their various auditors and banks and stockbrokers and solicitors are. Now, the next section is where all the data begins. If we go under income, here we can see the income statement of the company. It is divided in sections. For example, you'll see each section here marked by its title, so continuous operations, earnings before interest and tax, discontinued operations, per share values, etc. And for each of these values, we have data going back many years, and you can change the year by using the previous and next buttons here at the top. A little orange question mark button on each section will open up a help page, which will give you a brief description of what each of those items are. And finally, a little chart will appear here on the right hand side. Depending on the vertical height of your monitor, you will either see 1, 2 or 3 graphs. If you would like to graph any of the values on the income statement, all you need to do is to click on the value, drag and let go. If I want to see how much tax they've been paying, I can click, drag and let go, and that will show me a little chart of taxation and administrative expenses, or whichever value you wish to graph. And so you can very quickly graph any of these numbers. By default, the program will show you the data divided into specific financial years. So you can see here the last one is 2017 with a year ending on the 31st of December 2017. There's no 2018 yet because as we saw before, the financial report will not be out until the 21st of February. Now in SharePad, to let you know, if a company releases their results on any given day, you can expect the data to be in SharePad within 1 or 2 working days in the program. Everything all nicely tabulated for you. If you would like to see the quarterly or half-yearly breakdown, depending on the company, there's a quarterly button here at the bottom. Press it, and we can now see the half-yearly breakdown. So there's a year end, and then there is the half-yearly report here. So we do have a half-yearly report for 2018, not yet the year end. And you can toggle it on and off by just pressing a quarterly button. TTM stands for trailing 12 months. This will show you values based upon the last 12 months of available financial reports. In the case of BAE Systems, the last financial report was issued for the June half year. So these values are calculated by adding the first half of 2018 with the second half of 2017. So if you look at a company that has issued their for which their last financial report was, say, a Q3 financial report, the trailing 12 months will be calculated using Q1, 2 and 3 of a current financial year and Q4 of a previous financial year. So it's always the last 12 months of information. If you don't want to see that, just press TTM and it will disappear. Forecasts, if you press this, it will add the forecast information to the table. So for example, we can see turnover, and we'll see the year 1, 2 and 3 year forecast of turnover. And it'll be the same thing for dividends, pre-tax profit, EBIT, etc. And again, if you're not interested in forecast data, just press it again and it will disappear. There is a lot of data on the screen, so you can press the summary button to hide a lot of the detail and only see the key information for each page. So here again on the income statement, we'll only see the key profit figures, but not all the intermediate calculations. Press it again and it will go back to showing you the full details. The balance sheet and cash flow tab are very similar, just that instead of showing you income statement figures, they'll show you balance sheet figures and cash flow statement figures. The ratios tab, this will show you key financial ratios. So these are mainly figures then calculated by SharePad itself, while the income, balance and cash flow figures, those are taken directly from the company's report. The ratios, on the other hand, the company doesn't actually report on what their EV to EBITDA ratio was, so we calculate it using the data in the other 3 tabs. Again, you can check here what the EV over EBITDA ratio has been over the last several years. The next tab is dividends. This is quite useful when if you want to go back and check if a when a company paid a dividend at any given time, and if you scroll you will have the entire history of dividends paid by the company. It's with very old established companies, it's not the entire history as our data begins in the 90s, but you will have over almost 3 decades of data at your disposal. You will notice that on the table there are 2 dividend figures. One is marked as dividends and one is marked as adjusted. This is because if a company splits its shares, so it has a 10-for-1 split, then what was before a 40p per share dividend is now a 4p per share dividend using the new number of shares. And in fact, if we scroll down and look very far in the past, we can see that this 5p dividend which had been paid, this is the actual amount that was paid back in 1995. However, because it had a 4-for-1 split, that 5p per share with a new number of shares in issue actually equates to 1.25p per share. This is very important when it comes for charting dividends, because if a share has had a split, it would seem it would look like there was a big drop in the value of a dividend, and actually it wasn't. It was just a share split, and you can see that right at the top. This is the chart of the dividend payments throughout the years. Now, at the moment, I've clicked on unadjusted. So these are the actual figures as they were paid at the time. So here there was a stock split, and so the dividend per share dropped. Again, it didn't drop because the company paid less. It's just that there were 4 times more shares in issue. In fact, if we press the adjusted button, we can now see what the actual amount was after we take the adjustments into consideration. So that's an important thing to consider. Next tab is forecasts. Now here is where we put all the broker forecasts. Now once upon a time we were able to display the breakdown of a forecast on a broker by broker basis, so you could see what Hargreaves Lansdown thought of BAE Systems. Now with the new MiFID II rules that came into play, that is no longer possible. So all the forecasts that you see, all the target price and consensus, are all averages. So our data provider for forecasts, which is Standard & Poor's, S&P, they collect all the data from all the brokers. They calculate averages, and they release the average data. The averages are calculated on a weighted basis, weighted by time. So a forecast which came out yesterday will carry more weight in the average calculation than a forecast which was issued 4 weeks ago. At the top, we have the summary, which is similar to what we saw in the summary page, or summary tab at the top. So again, we have a consensus, target price, and what the forecast turnover and forecast pre-tax profit is estimated to be. Here we have a chart of the opinion, and we can see how the opinion of BAE Systems has changed over time. So we can see that it was much closer to hold back in 2015, and it has gradually improved over time, and it's currently sitting at an outperform. We can see the breakdown of the opinion. So we have 9 buys, 5 outperforms, 6 holds, and 1 sell. We can't show you who says what, so you can't see what, for example, the Hargreaves Lansdown opinion is of BAE Systems, but we can show you what the actual breakdown was. Below is the actual table of forecasts, so you can see each forecast a year after year. The 2018 figures have not yet been released, so they're still marked as forecast. As soon as the 2018 figures are released, the most recent forecast year will become 2019, and the years will shift by 1. Now, the more interesting part of this is the chart. Now, especially this chart here at the bottom. Here you can see how the opinion has changed over time. So I've selected forecast item here at the bottom, says turnover, and I can see what the forecast for turnover has been a year ago, or a year or 2 years ago. So I can see that in January 2017, the forecast for the 2018 financial year was £20 billion. That forecast was adjusted downwards right until now, where the forecast is around 18.5 billion. And you can show this for any of the figures. You can show it for EBIT, EBITDA, turnover, target price, for example. You can see a nice chart of the target price. Here in orange, you can see what the target price currently is. This is a target price shifted by a year, and these are the current daily close prices. So the black line is just the chart of the stock. If we press the next tab, it's the custom tab. Now, there is a lot of information on the income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, and ratios. There might be quite a few of you who like to focus on a half a dozen, 20 particular figures that you consider more important than anything else. You can put them all in one neat little table using the custom tab. So when you press it the first time, you're going to see this. It's blank, there's nothing here. If we press the design button at the bottom, it will enter editing mode. And here we can create a table just like those in the income, balance, cash flow, ratios tab. Press this button, we create a new section. I'm going to call it section 1. And now that I've created the section, I can add data to the section. So if we press it, a box will open up. It'll ask me to choose the actual piece of data I want. So I'm going to select turnover. When this window opens up, you can actually search for turnover and click on it. Alternatively, if you can't find it, just click on the search box and type in what you're looking for, and it'll jump to that value. So I just want the current value of the turnover. I click on OK. The piece of data is called turnover. I can give it a custom name. Some of the figures can be a little wordy, so you might want to rename them with something that's slightly shorter. You can indent the value. That is quite useful if one value is the sum of the next two. You can indent them to make it a lot clearer to read. And you can add things like you can show it in bold text and show it as a debit, so it's going to show it as negative figures, and you can add a separator line to separate different subsections. And when you're happy, you click on OK. Now our turnover figure has appeared. And you can keep on adding new data or adding new sections to your page. When you're done, if you deselect the design button, now it's no longer in editing mode, so it's exactly as any other page on the financial screen. So before I move to the next section, I was just had a look here. There's a chat. Steve Day is asking, can you show the lowest and highest forecast figure as well as the average? No, we do not get that information. It is something that we could inquire with our provider. I do not know off the top of my head if our provider actually provides that information. We don't have it at the moment, but if you were to drop us an email at some point, we can find this out for you and then let you know. Now I would like to move to the list table, because financial details don't have to be displayed just in the financials page, but they can be displayed in a list. This is useful if you want to compare you want to compare a list of shares with one another. Financials is useful if you want to compare years with one another, 2015 with 2016, 17, 18. But here is if you want to compare BAE systems with other FTSE 100 stocks or FTSE 350 stocks. So I will open up the FTSE 350, it's a nice big list, and I'm going to go at the bottom here, select setting, and I'm going to create a new table. I'll call it My Financials, and I now have a blank table which I can edit and add columns to. So to add columns to a table, you probably know this already, but it's the Add Column button here at the top. That will open up a window where we can choose what information we want to display. Now, I will concentrate on post-tax profit, and I'm going to go through all of the details of the sub-options here. The sub-options are very similar with other figures, pre-tax profit, for example, or turnover, but I'll use post-tax. I'll explain things on post-tax profit, and all this is applicable to many of the other figures anyway. So if you want to display a column which simply shows what the current post-tax profit figure is, that's quite simple. You want the most recent. This is what year we're looking at. So most recent is the most recent financial report. So again, for BAE Systems, that will be the December 2017 financial report. We can look at a number of years ago or a number of years in the future. So 1, 2, and 3 year forecast. I do apologize. Whenever I click on these drop down menus, you're not going to see anything on the stream. That's unfortunately a little bug with the YouTube stream that doesn't actually show drop down menus. But if you try it on your SharePad, you will see it yourself. You click on it and you can pick a year on the drop down. I'm going to select most recent. On the right hand side, it will ask me for what quarter I want exactly. By default, it'll pick the full year. So this is the year end financial report. But I can select the quarter 1 value, the quarter 2 value, the quarter 3, the quarter 4. Or I can show the final, which is the second half, i.e. the quarter 3 plus quarter 4 value. There's also an option here to show cumulative. So if I were to select quarter 3 and tick cumulative, it would display the sum of the Q1, Q2, and Q3 post-tax profit. But for now, I'll keep it on full year. And what I have here is I want value of, that's just the number itself, what the post-tax profit was. And on the right-hand side, I've got the additional options. Post-tax will display the post-tax profit, the actual figure in millions or billions of pounds. If I select post-tax per share, it will do exactly that. It will take the post-tax profit and divide it by the number of shares in issue. In this particular case, post-tax per share is EPS. Now it's worth having a look at this drop-down menu here because this is a new addition we've made to the program after we noticed some of the figures being fairly different. Now, there are for profit figures, there are 3 different values that you can display. You will find reported. Reported is the reported figure from the company's financial report, just copy pasted from financial report as reported by the company itself. There is a figure called normalized. This is normalized post-tax profit. Now, because different companies will treat different cost figures slightly differently, our data provider, this is Morningstar, will apply a normalization process in order to make all of the figures, in order to make sure that the figures are calculated using the same accounting standards for each company. This will make comparing each company a lot easier then. Especially if companies might treat extraordinary items slightly differently, and Morningstar will treat them always in the same way. So a normalized post-tax profit figure can be compared from one company to the next. The third option is company adjusted. This is again a normalization process, just like the normalized option. However, this is a normalization process which is done by the company itself. Some companies will publish company adjusted figures on their financial report. Not everybody will do this, but when they do, that figure is available in SharePad. The option that appears by default is preferred. Now, preferred is just simply an automatic selection of those options. Preferred will mean that if the company has issued company adjusted figures, it will display those. If no company adjusted figures are available for that company, it will pick the normalized figure. If no normalized figure is available, it will use the company reported figure. If you want a little recap on this, press a little orange question mark button and it'll go into further detail about this. If I click on OK, I have now added a column which will display the most recent post-tax profit figure for the company. One thing I didn't mention before is that the currency in which we report are the figures in SharePad are the same that are used by the company itself. So BAE Systems will report in pounds, and so all these figures are 1383 is millions of pounds, while BP, who reports in dollars, those figures are going to be in dollars. If you go to the financials tab, which is something I forgot to mention before, you'll see here in the top left millions of pounds unless stated. And if you're in a table, you can actually add a column that will display that. If we press add column, search for currency, and I do currency results and click on OK, and now I have a currency that is used to report the financial figures of the company. Now let's go back to add column and add some more. We'll go onto financial, we'll pick post-tax profit. Let's go through these options below. So below here, below value of, so as I said, value of will just display the value itself, the most recent post-tax profit, or the post-tax profit from 1 year ago, 2 years ago. Growth percentage, on the other hand, will give me the percentage change over a period of time. So most recent growth percentage 1 year will display the percentage change in post-tax profit between the most recent financial year and 1 year before that. So 2017 or 2016. If we hit add, here it is, it'll display it as a percentage. And you can display multiple. So if I want to display what the percentage change in post-tax profit has been over the last few years, I can now select 1 year ago, growth percentage over 1 year. This is going to take the 1 year ago figure, so the 2016 figure, and show me the percentage change compared to the year before, so 2015. I can hit add, and I can keep on doing this. So 2 years ago, add, and 3 years ago, add, and 4 years ago, add. And so here I can see progress over time, what the change in post-tax profit was 4 years ago, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and the most recent year. Now the next section, the next option, sorry, is annualized growth. So here I have displayed what the on the table what the growth was over the last 5 years. If I do annualized, it will give me what the annualized change has been over the last 5 years. So if I select most recent, annualized over 5 years, and I click on OK, it will show me that it grew by 8.3, 0.6, 5.5, dropped by 11.4, and grew by 8.5, which on an annualized basis over 5 years equates to a 2.0% growth annually. The next option is average over, which simply calculates what the average of the values were. So here if I select most recent and do again over 5 years, this isn't showing me the average growth, it's going to show me the average post-tax profit. So if I hit add, I can see that the oh, I selected EPS by accident. Let's go back. So I do post-tax profit, average over 5 years, and I hit add. And now I can see that on average, over the last 5 years, BAE System has posted a post-tax profit of 1.298 billion, so 1,298 million pounds. The next option is cumulative. Instead of calculating the average from the most recent going back 5 years, it will calculate the cumulative value. So it's just the sum total of those 5 values. If I hit add, I can see that the post-tax profit has added up to 6.5 billion pounds over the last 5 years. The next option is years of growth. So it will tell me, counting from the most recent year and going backwards, how many years of consecutive growth in post-tax profit there has been. For BAE Systems, that's 3, and we can tell quite easily from here because post-tax profit, current post-tax profit is up. 1 year ago was up, 2 years ago was up, but 3 years ago was down. So it's had 3 consecutive years. However, Babcock International, share above that, has had 7 consecutive years of growth in post-tax profit. And the final column is similar to the years of growth, but here it's only asking for years positive. So if I hit add, I move the column slightly, and I again accidentally selected EPS again, and there we go. So here it's not looking for growth, it's just looking for a positive post-tax profit figure. So BAE Systems has had 25 consecutive years where the company has been profitable. It has posted a non-negative post-tax profit figure. And before we move on to the next section, the very last thing I wanted to point out is this: adjust for inflation. If you don't select it, as I have done up until now, it will just simply use the values, the post-tax profit figures, as they were posted at the time. However, if you are looking back quite far into the past, then you might want to consider adjusting those figures for inflation, because obviously £1 billion in profit 20 years ago is not the same as £1 billion in profits today. And what SharePad will do, it will apply the inflation figures to the historical values to adjust them for inflation. And if you're only analyzing the last 2 or 3 years, it might not make a huge amount of difference. But if you are analyzing these figures in the very long term, over a decade or 2 decades, then you might want to consider using the adjusted for inflation, because it will alter the figures fairly significantly in some cases. If you want to know, by the way, what are the inflation figures that SharePad uses, there is a specific list for economic data where you'll find the Bank of England base rates, house price averages, etc., and including inflation. Go to other lists and you'll find economic data at the bottom here. So use that and you can find what the actual inflation rates were for the that SharePad then uses to calculate the inflation adjustments. And so before I move on to the next section, I'll just have a quick look to see if there's any relevant questions at the moment. Can you please add column price to book ratio? Yes, okay. Let's have a look at that, because again, this is actually a generic explanation. It is value for any price to figures. If you go to add column, if you want the price to book ratio, you're not searching for price to book ratio. What you're looking for is the book value or net asset value. So if I search for NAV, you can search for, now actually price to NAV actually exists as its own independent value, but not all of them do. If we select just the net asset value or book value, one of the sub options is price to. So you will have the NAV, so that's a net asset value, the book value as it is in millions or billions of pounds, and then you have a net asset value per share, and then you'll see the price to a net asset value ratio, and that is then true for a lot of the other figures. You'll see under additional options, you'll see the value itself, the per share value, and the price to value ratio. So here it is, value again, most recent or 1 year ago, and then click on OK, and here is the price to net asset value or price to book value, depending on the terminology that you use. One last point, you'll see that some of these columns, not all of them, but actually most of them in this case, have a little blue triangle in the top right hand corner. If a column has a little blue triangle, it means that the values, you can click on the values for to receive further information. It depends on what figure you're clicking on. If you look at the I don't know, green black magic formula column, for example, it will give you a breakdown of the calculations, and or Piotrowski F score, for example, will give you the breakdown of the calculations or further information. So a little blue button here, the blue triangle just means that you can click on the items to receive further information. And now finally, let's get to filtering. I'm going to show you an example filter, and hopefully then this will give you a good idea of how to then build the filters that you specifically need. It's just about understanding the logic of how the filtering works, and once you understand the logic, then you can just apply it to any values that exist in the program. So to create a filter, you probably some of you might know this. You open up a list, so we're still on our FTSE 350 list. We go to filter and we hit apply filter. Here you'll have a list of all of the filters that are saved in your SharePad, and if we press new, and we'll give it a name, we'll call it my filter because I have no imagination. If I then click on OK, if you want, you can add a little bit of a description, especially if you start building many of them. It will help you remember what each of the filters are and what they do. But then you select the filter you just created, click on OK, and the filter will open up. In this case, a blank filter is opened up because we yet haven't set anything up. So to build a filter, it's pretty simple. You just tell SharePad what you want to filter by and then set the ranges for values. So let's go back to our post-tax profit, for example. Let's say I want to find all shares that have, or over the last 5 years, have posted an annual post-tax profit of 20%, so compared to the previous year. So the post-tax profit, I want annualized growth calculated over 5 years, starting from the most recent financial year and then going back. I click on OK, and the column is then added to the list with all the figures that are been calculated by SharePad. I can then decide what range of values I consider acceptable. I'm looking for companies that have had a annualized growth in post-tax profits over the last 5 years of at least 20%. So there's a box there that says minimum. I set 20, and I won't set a maximum because the larger the better. So I'll leave maximums blank. Whenever you make a change to the filter, the filter bar here will turn to orange, and a little green apply button will appear. SharePad does not recalculate the values of the results of the filters in real time. So just press apply, and now the filter, this criteria to the filter has been applied. And in fact, on your screen are only the list of shares within the FTSE 350 that have posted a post-tax profit growth annualized over the last 5 years of 20% or more. We can look at other figures. Let's say we're looking for, we want the company to be cheap. So we press add criteria, and let's look for EBIT yield. Again, I can't remember where EBIT yield is, so I go to the search box and type in EBIT. And here it is, EBIT yield. I can select it, and here I want the EBIT yield. I want the average. I want to look at the average EBIT yield over the last 5 years. So I don't care if it's had 1 year where it dipped slightly, as long as that on average it's been good. Now, as I've got EBIT yield in front of me, I'd like to just pause for a second to explain this option, which is confuses some people, and I must admit it puzzled me initially as well. Up until recently, now the law has changed, so things are changing now. But up until recently, companies did not have to post any future lease commitments as part of their liabilities, then as part of their costs. So companies had this hidden debt. They might have committed to rent. This is especially an important figure with companies like retail companies, because they might have committed to rent a particular space for the next 10 years. However, they only post what this year's costs have been, but they're not posting the fact that they will have to be paying these costs not next year, not the year after that, but for the next 10 years. And that can make a big difference, because a company can't just close down a shop to save money, because they'll still have to pay rent on the building. What the lease adjustment option does, it attempts to estimate what the lease commitments are going to be for the company for what the future commitments are, and applies that, and then discounts that on various figures. So it adds it as a cost. If you want more details of this, you can look at Phil Oakley's original article on this, and what I'll do, I will then post it in the on the description of the video once we upload this on YouTube. So if you want to find out more about it, you can click on the link and read his article, because it's very well written and very detailed. So I'm going to tick lease adjustment because I want to include these potential hidden debts, and I click on OK. And again, I want the EBIT yield of a company to be on average at least 10%. So again, I set my minimum to 10%. I'm not going to set any maximum. I hit apply, and now in front of me are all of the shares in the FTSE 350. There's only 17 left that have had posted an annualized growth of post-tax profits over the last 5 years of 20% or more, and an average EBIT yield of 10% or more. And we can keep on adding criteria to this. And obviously, the more criteria you add, the shorter the list is going to become. So I'll add one more, which again, I think of another fairly common figure to want to look at, and that is dividend payments. So I want to make sure that the company has been paying good dividends, because I'm planning on buying shares for my pension portfolio. So I want a nice solid company. So I search for the figure, so I type in yield in the search box, and I'll have the dividend yield, and here it is. And again, I don't want to make sure just that it's paying a good dividend. I want to make sure that it has on average paid a good dividend. So I'll give it, again, I'll search for the average dividend yield over the last 5 years. I'll click on OK, and I want to make sure that they've paid on average 5% dividend. I hit apply, and here is my shortlist. So these are the only 5 companies, in the FTSE 350 that have paid at least 5% dividend or more on average over the last 5 years. They've had an EBIT yield of 10% or more, and a annualized post-tax profit of 20% or more. Now, one thing to pay attention, especially if you're building fairly large filters with lots and lots of different criteria, is the ability to toggle criteria on and off. You might end up building a large filter. It's got 7 or 8 criteria, and when you open up the filter and you look at a list, even the entire London Stock Exchange, it gives you 0 results. And you notice that maybe you've been a bit too strict, and you want to know which criterion is a culprit of maybe making all of the shares disappear. So what you can do is disable one criteria at a time and have a look at what happens. So for example, what happens if we ignore the EBIT yield figure? We can just uncheck, hit apply, and now the filter is only being calculated using the post-tax profit and the yield figures. It is completely ignoring the EBIT yield figure, and in fact I can see there's a couple of companies that are significantly below the level that I've set, and some don't have an EBIT yield at all. This could be because the EBIT was negative, in which case if the EBIT was negative, no EBIT yield is calculated. That's why some of the figures are blank. And you can toggle criteria on and off as you please without having to delete them. Now, if you press a little dustbin button, as you might have figured, it will remove the criteria entirely. In this case, if you want to add it again, you'll have to go through the Add Criterion menu once more. Press Edit if you want to change the details. Say I want the yield to be calculated over the last 10 years, not over the last 5. I press Edit. I change this to 10. I click on OK. And that will reset the figure. So I re-enter my minimum of 5, and I hit apply, and here are my results. Once you have created the filter, you can move freely from list to list, and the filter will stay active until you either log out from SharePad or hit the exit button. So if I now press FTSE 100, it's now showing me the results of my filter within the FTSE 100. None whatsoever. Or I could go to other lists and select LSE shares to apply my filter on the entirety of the London Stock Exchange. Once you're done, you can hit exit, and now you're back to displaying the entire list. If you want to apply the filter again, it will be within your filter list. Go to filter, apply filter. Here is my filter. Click on OK, and here it is. And One last thing about filters is that if you select it in the dialog box here, you can press the edit details here on the right, and you can make changes. What you can do is set a description and set in a specific associated list. If there is no associated list and you select the filter will apply to whichever list you happen to have open at that moment in time, be it the FTSE 100 or one of your portfolios. If you set an associated list, no matter what you're seeing on your screen, so you could be on one of your portfolios, if you select my filter, it will jump to the specified list. So if I set this to FTSE 350, it doesn't matter if I'm viewing a portfolio or the FTSE 100, I select the filter, it will jump to show me applying the filter to the FTSE 350. It can be useful in some cases, especially if you're building filters that are specifically geared for a type of instrument. So if it's geared towards AIM stocks, for example, you might want it to jump directly to the AIM share because the filter is irrelevant for say FTSE 100 stocks. If you keep it on no associated list, nothing changes. And the other thing that you can do is to lock your filter. If you select lock, a little padlock icon will appear, and it simply means that you can't edit it. So click on OK, you can see the results, but it means that you can't accidentally delete a criterion. So it's quite useful, especially if you're using it on tablets. Sometimes it can be a bit fiddly and you don't want to run the risk of accidentally making changes to your filter. Once it's ready, you lock it up, and now you can no longer modify it. Obviously, if you then do want to modify it, all you've got to do is go to Filter and go Unlock Current Filter to unlock it, or just go back to the filter box and set Unlock Filter. And now I'm once again free to modify it anywhere I want. Now this is where I wanted to stop right now. I'll be sitting here probably for the next 10 minutes taking questions. I can see there is quite a few of questions coming through. So going back, going back the list of chat questions. Oh yes, you also need debt to shareholders equity. So that is again shareholders equity. That's just another name for book value or net asset value. And if I exit here, I can't recall if we do have this as a figure, but debt. And no, but that actually is a very good chance to quickly explain about how you can combine items. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that we don't have a debt to shareholders equity figure, but we can calculate it. If we search for debt, so let's have a look at borrowing. So we can look at I'm assuming net borrowing, but you can do total borrowing if you prefer. I'll do net borrowing. So I select net borrowing and I'll just select the most recent value. Button at the bottom, combine items. So if I press that, I can do net borrowing. I can then apply a calculation to it. So in this case I will do divide by. So net borrowing, divide by, and then I go and select the net asset value. So here it is. And so in fact there's a description here at the bottom as well. So it's yeah, also known as book value, shareholders funds, or shareholder equity. So click on OK. And now I'm going to add a column where I take the net borrowing and divide it by the net asset value of a company. Click on OK. And here is my ratio. And so you can do things like check if one is larger than the other. You can add one to the other, divide one, do one as a percentage of the other, and you can just take any two numerical values. So any column that returns a numerical value, you can take that figure, apply calculation to then a second figure, and apply that as a column. And not only you can display it as a column, you can then do the same thing as a criteria in a filter. So again, you just you build it exactly in the same way. You add criteria and repeat the same actions I just did. Okay, how can I view major shareholders, please? That is, you'll find that under the DD button, which is short for directors' dealings. So let's go back to our faithful BAE systems. You select a share, and now let's do a split screen mode and go under DD, and here it is. So you have the major shareholders here, directors as well, and below you will see there's a history of all the directors' dealings, so purchases, sales, transfers of shares done by any director in the company. And can you associate portfolios to a filter as well as lists? That's a very good question. You know what? I do not know off the top of my head. No, you can't. I don't know if there was a technical reason why this wasn't done, or if it was just missed. What I'll do, I will add this to our developer list, so we can just have a look at it the next time they get round to it. So no, at the moment, no, you can't do that. There is a way of knowing how old forecast data is. What's a typical update cycle for forecast data? Well, it used to be, again, a lot easier when we did get the individual forecast from individual brokers. Now we do not. The data itself is updated daily, i.e. we receive a data file every day for all the companies, and we'll upload that. Now, how often individual companies' information is actually updated, that depends on the company. Company like BAE Systems, they have a lot of brokers publishing forecasts, so you can expect the forecasts to update on a fairly regular basis, and you can see that by looking at the little charts here at the bottom. So if I can see here that how often the figures actually changed over time. So and yes, BAE Systems, it's a large company. There are many brokers, so just a single broker updating their figures will force a recalculation of the averages, and so a new figure is published, and we can see here then how many brokers there are. So it's you got 21 brokers. So you can these figures for BAE Systems will update pretty regularly. Obviously, if you take that tiny little AIM stock that might have one or maybe two brokers that publish figures, you can then see from the chart that those figures are probably not updated on a very regular basis, because they only get updated once one of those two brokers updates one of their figures. Then Ken Jarrett asked, can we build a rank? So yes, actually there are figures. Okay, let's go back to the table. Let's have a look at that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove a few of these columns just to clear up some space, and let's have a look at that. You will notice when you add a column, there is a rank tab. What this is doing is, instead of displaying the figures themselves, it is ranking those figures within the market. So, for example, let's see, I'm not interested in knowing what the dividend yield figures are themselves. I want to know where the company ranks compared to the others, because I might see a dividend yield of 4%, but is that good? Well, if most other companies pay 5, then no, it's not. But if it's all the other companies pay 3, then 4% is good. And so you select a figure that you want to calculate the rank on, and then you choose how to rank it. So you can rank it by market. Market is the entire London Stock Exchange in the case of UK stocks, or the entire American markets for the US. You can do it by industry, by super sector, or by sector. And you can display it in two ways. You can either display the ranking as a bar, or I can display it as text. So, for example, I could see that BAE Systems is ranked 1 out of 11 within the aerospace and defense sector. So it's not just a dividend yield, it's the best. There's no other, it's a highest paying dividend company within the entire sector. So there's no point in me looking for a better paying company, because there is none within its sector. And again, little blue triangle on the top right, so you can click on the box and it'll give you the details. Same thing with this, and you can measure lots of other figures. So you can do turnover, post-tax profit, or any financial figure that you wish to analyze, and you can analyze it, as I said, by market, by industry, by sector. Is the easiest way to find the next reporting date from financial companies a simple next reporting event? Well, okay, if you want to know when the next reporting dates are for BAE Systems, then yes, absolutely, go onto financials company, and there's that little table I showed you before. SharePad does have a financial calendar feature. So if you're not interested in looking at when a specific company is going to report, but I want to know when any one of the companies in the list that I'm currently viewing, so any company in the FTSE 350 is going to report, I can go to more, and there will be calendar. I click on calendar. This is going to open up a financial calendar. At the bottom, I can press design and I can set it. So I'm setting it from today, and I can go forward, say 2 weeks. You can choose what kind of events you want the calendar to display, and then OK. And here we have it. So I can find out what is due, what's happening tomorrow, what's happening on Tuesday next week, Wednesday, etc. So I can anticipate things that will be happening within the FTSE 350. And the calendar page will always apply to whatever list you have on the left hand side. So it could be FTSE 350, 100, or one of your portfolios. Can you see how reliable past a company forecasts have been? Yes, you can, because going back under financials and forecasts, you can see where the actual results were. So, for example, I've now pressed a button here at the bottom. I'm still looking at BAE Systems. I'm still looking at turnover, and I'm going to show previous year's forecasts. So now that the green line here, we can see this was the forecast turnover for the 2017 financial year, how it changed over time, and then this was then past January 2018, and this is when the financial report actually was issued, and we can see that the forecast was significantly higher than the actual result. We can see that it forecast to be over 19.5, and it was below 18.5. So we can see the accuracy of that. And again, you could apply this on any of the figures on any of the companies. I want to start tracking my portfolio on SharePad from the 1st of January 2019 against the all-share total return, and add dividends from then. If it's time, can you do a quick demo of this? Okay, I mean, I will refer you to the previous webinar, but very, very quickly, if you build a portfolio, so I'm just going to just call this test. So I create a new blank portfolio. I go to add to portfolio, search for an instrument, and I'm going to stick with BAE Systems. And you can build your portfolio this way. So add to portfolio and search for the instruments you want to add. There's a transaction section here, which will show you the transactions in that portfolio. So you select a share that you wish to record a transaction against, and under add transaction, you can then select buy, and you can then record your purchase on whatever date you want to record it on, to whatever price per share you want to record it. There we go, and then click on OK, and you can then start building your portfolio. Under the design button here at the bottom, there's a compare against, and you can choose the instrument. So you can, and I will do total return. I click on OK, and now it's comparing it against the FTSE 100 total return index. Another thing to do is press add cash to add a cash credit, because if you start recording purchases, the cash balance will go negative and it will screw up all the figures. So I'm just going to enter a credit of £50,000 on the, say, 1st of January, and OK, and there we go. So now I've actually got figures. Once you've recorded all your purchases or all your sales, you don't have to record dividends. If you go to add transaction, you can press add dividends automatically. Whenever you do this, it will run through all your purchases and all your sales, check if there's any missed dividends, because the program obviously knows if you're entitled to one or not, and it will automatically add them. So just firstly record the dividends, and then whenever you want to run a check, just go here and the program will check. If a dividend's already been recorded, it will skip over it. If there's one missing, it will pop up in the box giving you showing that one's missing. You click on OK and the dividend gets automatically added. On the forecast sheet, can you explain the actual results versus the forecast dot versus line? Yes, I don't know if that came after I explained this or not, but yes, as I said before, the green line here is what the latest result forecast history. So this is the history of the forecast of the last reported financial year. In this case, for BAE Systems, it's the 2017 financial year. And we can see on the graph how the forecast changed over time, and it went up and up from 2016 to 2017. Then from 2017, it kind of stayed flat. And then here we have January 18. This vertical line here indicates the end of the year. Of course, this was the end of a financial year, but the financial report itself didn't come out until a couple of months later, which means that the forecast still had a time to actually tick up, and that's where the forecast ends, because on this day the actual financial report was issued, so no more forecasts were issued, obviously, and we have a little green dot here to indicate the fact that this green dot is the actual figure that was published at by the company. So we can see the green line ending here, and the little dotted line is just to connect the two, but the forecast ends here. And so we can see that the forecast was significantly higher than the actual reported figure. And you can play around. Of course, this is not always the case. Sometimes it's significantly understated, something significantly overstated. So it depends on the company and on the year. So I think I've answered all the questions. I am going to now terminate the webinar here. As my colleague actually just mentioned in chat, the recording is going to go up on YouTube probably tomorrow. I'll play around with it, do a tiny little bit of editing, and then add it to our YouTube channel. If you have any more questions, you know where to contact us. You can phone us, you can send us emails, and in the meantime, then well, thank you very much for listening, and have a nice day.